Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind the scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Hello there, I'm Chris Dashu.
And I'm Jess Byard.
And we are the hosts of the One Season Show, a podcast where we take a look at TV shows that only lasted one season.
Each month we tackle several episodes from the show, and on this episode we're still discussing The Prisoner. We are almost done, and we're continuing with episodes 14 and 15, Living in Harmony and The Girl Who Was Deaf.
So, like just mentioned, these are the penultimate episodes of the show. So, again, not in the original order, but... So, Living in Harmony aired December 29th, 1967. It is directed by David Tomblin. It is based off of a story by David Tomblin and is also credit given to Ian Rakoff and Frank Maher. Number 2 is played by David Bauer. This episode features a Wild West town.
It's a Wild West allegory.
It is a Wild West allegory. It is a literal Wild West episode of this show. Mm-hmm. It is insane. There are saloons, there are cowboy hats, there are horses, there are gunfights. It is something that I should have liked, and I liked parts of it, but then it gets right back to exactly the show that we were expecting, and yep.
So this episode is actually, on the last episode we discussed how 10 out of 17 of these episodes are essentially filler episodes. This one... as I was reading about it, is absolutely a filler episode. It was, basically, this is one of the 10 concepts that they came up with when they were trying to add on episodes. And Ian Rakoff, I guess, like this whole Wild West story, and the whole crux of this episode being that number 6 is forced to become the sheriff of this town so that this girl can go free. Kathy, I believe is her name. And so the whole thing is that he will take the sheriff's badge, but he refuses to carry a gun. They send out people to beat him up, and to try and, and encourage him to, keep a gun, but he does not. So I guess this story was influenced. Writer Ian Rakoff spent some time in South Africa during apartheid, and I guess the story was influenced by a night where he and some of his group members were out, and Ian Rakoff, was encountered by this man who he felt was a racist, and Ian Rakoff was prepared to, I guess, shoot this man, and was stopped by a member of his group who told him that if he wanted to rise up the ranks, then he was going to have to give up the gun. So there's that. And the other thing I found interesting about this episode is that I guess it was not originally aired because it was not originally aired in the first run, like right off the bat, because they said that it was because of the use of hallucinogenic drugs, but that doesn't make any sense because hallucinogenic drugs and mind-altering things have been used in the show before. The real reason that's evidently speculated is that because they didn't want it to be interpreted Patrick McGoohan not taking the gun as an anti-war statement during the time.
Good
because
Lord.
Vietnam.
Oh my God.
So we have essentially the big reveal in this episode is that the Wild West town was a ruse and it's all fake, and we were just trying to get number 6 to give us information by doing this instead. And yep, that sure sounds like a filler episode, doesn't it?
Well, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, every episode of the show has essentially been, how can we try to get information from number 6?
Which, fine, I get that, because that's generally the goal when it comes to spies. You know, one spy is trying to get information from another, one government's trying to get information from another. But there have to be subplots. There have to be other things in the show happening to add layers and interest. Otherwise, it's just, the same cat and mouse. They set up the traps, he avoids the traps, rinse, repeat.
Boy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this episode...
It's insane. This episode is insane. Yeah. The idea behind this episode is insane.
Yeah, it's just a really elaborate...
Ruse. Another one. That they created this whole other town. I want to know more about the village. I want to know more about the inner working. Like, there's so many things in this show I want to know about, but I have to watch the same formula every episode. Yeah, keep wanting, because it ain't it. Yup, we're not getting it anytime soon. We may get it in the last episode, but here's the thing. This episode, like, the premise is interesting, but when you couple that with the fact that, you know, this is one of those episodes that is admittedly filler, who cares?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter. And I mean, there's so many different rules and theories behind, story approach and things like that. But if you're going to write in a formula, you're going to get formulaic, boring writing. That's going to grow old real quick.
And boy, doesn't. The show hasn't changed in 14 episodes. There's been 1 or 2 episodes that have changed up the formula slight.
Well, and there are no other characters either. Like, number 2 will have like a lackey for an episode, like he has somebody who assists him, whether it's, the scientist to switch the brains, or, the number 55 to kind of seduce Patrick McGoohan, whatever. Like, we don't get to know anybody. And we don't get to know anything about Patrick McGoohan because his whole thing is not giving information. And so we're stuck in this weird place where we're inside a world that is for spies and government, and both of them are trying to avoid revealing who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing to the other one, but they've forgotten to reveal any of that to the audience. And the audience does get privileged information. I mean, not always, but generally, especially when you're doing, like a long-running series, the audience gets to know things that the characters don't.
Right.
But here, it feels the opposite. It feels like the characters know more than the audience does, but in a way that means that we're never going to know. Like, it's not in a, I know something you don't know, and it's going to be a twisty reveal at the end. It's just, we're just never going to touch on it.
I mean, literally look at the opening of the episodes. Every single episode opens the exact same way, and it is with a spoken part of Patrick McGoohan putting in his resignation, but we don't get to hear it because they have removed the audio of the dialogue. Like, just that should be indicative of the show as a whole.
The intro is, if you hit skip intro on Amazon, it won't skip all the way through because the intro is so long, and it is kind of set up like we're picking up at the end or the middle of an episode where he was still a spy. But then it's just he wakes up in the village. And again, everything is the same. It is all the same and repetitious. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's I don't know. But it's not an entertaining ride, unfortunately. Not always.
Well, this episode has some things that could have been interesting. They just none of it succeeds because when the curtain is pulled back, the response is, oh, great.
Right.
More of the same.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a bummer, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the show's it's a huge missed opportunity. And I mean, I guess it's not when we know the fact that there were 7 specific episodes, and maybe if you just watch those 7, maybe you get, a better experience out of it. And honestly, if we can figure out which those 7, which full 7 episodes those are, I maybe wouldn't mind trying to watch it just that way. But yeah, it's a missed opportunity, and that's unfortunate because there's so much interesting and cool stuff going on here. I do like Patrick McGoohan as, number 6. And I think that they, as small of parts as they may have, the bit characters are interesting when they're there. It's just we don't get to know anything about anybody, and we don't get to spend any time with anybody and doing anything.
And then you ultimately have an episode like this where they try to convince you that the show is something else for the almost entire run of the episode, and then at the end they're like, oh, but never mind, because it doesn't, it doesn't matter.
Are you talking about this episode, or are you talking about the next episode?
I'm talking about both, I guess, because it could theoretically apply to both. So let's talk about The Girl Who Was Death, the third to last episode of this show in the order that we're watching. It aired January 18th, 1968. It's directed once again by David Tomlin. It is based off of an idea by David Tomlin with writing from Terrence Feely, stars Kenneth Griffith as number 2, and it has number 6 is apparently back in London helping to do an actual spy espionage mission, but let's just cut to the chase. The entire episode turns out to be a story that number 6 was telling to a group of children in the village, and I hate this episode, and I hate this show.
Yeah, this was the cardinal sin. This is the thing that you don't do. And largely because of shows from this era and maybe, a little later 70s and 80s, the whole trope of it was all a dream, or, it's this sick boy looking into the snow globe and imagining this whole thing. Like, that's a cop-out. That's a huge, massive cop-out. That is, I don't know how to end my story, so we're doing it. And honestly, what this episode is, evidently, is an unused 2-part script from Danger Man.
Oh, I know. I read that, and that's insane.
So we effectively get an episode where Patrick McGoohan is just Danger Man, which, I haven't watched the show, but I can assume that, what it's like. And he then... So this episode is really just Patrick McGoohan's character, who we still don't get a name.
Number 6.
Yeah. Goes from place to place in where he's, finds secret messages to tell him to go to a next place. And at that place, he will inevitably be, an attempt on his life will be made, and he will come out of it. And then he will get another note to go to a different place until he ends up at a lighthouse that is a rocket ship.
Sure.
That he escaped, I guess, but not before having conflict with people the 2 men dressed up as like Napoleon and some other, military so-and-so. And yeah, I guess when you tell it when I say it like that, where it's like, there's a rocket ship and then there's these people dressed up and blah, blah, blah. Of course it sounds like a kid's story. And obviously, as we watch the show, I wasn't really expecting number 6 to have, gotten out or something. I didn't, I knew we were going to end up back in the village, but I'm kind of surprised that they didn't pull something like this ending earlier.
Yeah, me too.
Honestly.
I'm right there with you.
Like, it's kind of like, this is like lowest hanging of fruit, guys, and you waited this long. And again, this is the order that we're watching them in. But still, I think this episode, in general, with all the orders, falls later. I could be wrong, but it's waste. It's a horrible waste of an episode. It's the absolute lowest hanging fruit of twist endings you could do. And it's not fun to watch. It's certainly not the episode you want to like end on right before you come to your finale.
Well, and that's the thing is, it does automatically set up like, oh, he's in London. Like, how did that happen? Okay, so this is a dream or something. And instead of it just being a dream, it's a story sequence. And just because it wasn't a dream, you think that's somehow better? You think that this is the more excusable
Same
version?
concept.
Yeah. It's not excusable. This is an inexcusable episode. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the disappointment that I feel towards this show and this episode specifically is really shocking because, like you said, this is the worst of the worst things you can do if you have a show like this or any show. Any
movie. If you end any of unless you're dealing with dream logic and dream worlds, do not introduce it was never there, it never happened. It's just like the trope of, the dead person in the movie that isn't actually
dead the whole time.
Who's been dead the whole time. Where it's like, oh, that one character is only being spoken to by that other one character. So, gee.
Or they're in their head.
Or they're in their head, or something like that. So yeah, it's a cop out because it means that that everything that you wrote up to this point did not matter at all. Honestly, that's kind of how I felt about the first part of the Avengers. finales. But
Well, there you go.
But yeah, no, no, this is unfortunate. Are you starting to fall into the friend of the podcast, Mike White's opinion of
this episode
wanting to forget this show?
This episode has pushed me in that direction a lot harder than anything else has. It's we're at this point now where we've had essentially 3 episodes in a row. You could even make the case of 4 episodes in a row that have felt completely unnecessary, that have felt like a complete waste of time. I mean, living in harmony, it's not as bad as this episode.
No, because at least it is creative.
Does the same thing. But it pretty much does the same thing.
Yeah, but I guess like the execution is a bit more interesting than just him being Danger Man in London and then dressed up like Sherlock Holmes.
Hello and welcome to Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. My name is Hunter. In this podcast, I'll be joined by a different guest each week to discuss a classic Western movie or TV show. I've been a fan of classic Westerns for as long as I can remember, and in recent years, they've become very nostalgic for me. I love the aesthetic, the tropes, and I love seeing different filmmakers' takes on them. At their best, they're incredibly entertaining, rewatchable, and some of my all-time favorite movies are Westerns. We'll mostly focus on Western movies made in Hollywood, but we'll also be covering spaghetti Westerns, and one thing I'm very excited to get into are Western TV shows. I've got some amazing guests coming on the show, film professors, historians, and podcasters. And Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys is part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, and many guests on the show will be from other shows on the network. Thanks for listening.
It's pretty much a simulation, though, right? I mean, Living in Harmony was a simulation, and this is a construct of the reader's mind when it comes to the story that he's telling. It's lazy. It's lazy, and there's parts where he's riding a roller coaster, and it's green screen, and it looks cheap, and it looks cheap, it feels cheap, and the twist at the end is the cheapest part of a very cheap and disappointing episode that Patrick McGoohan definitely didn't want to be part of. And
here's like the thing about that whole green screen and everything. When Patrick McGoohan was talking about and everything that I've read about this has just been sources from various books that have been written on this show. But when he was talking about the filler episodes, his goals for them were to A, continue the theme that violence does not pay off, and B, make them as visually exciting as he possibly can. Well, that is a failure, especially on this episode.
I mean, they tried.
At the beginning, yes, at the beginning, this show was really striking and cool and interesting looking, and I wanted to see more of it. But as I've said before, we're not seeing anything new, so everything that was previously interesting is now old.
That first episode seems like a lifetime ago.
It really does.
Right? It's shocking how quickly the show kind of fell apart and then just started getting mired in the muck of its own problems.
Mm-hmm. But we're almost done.
Yeah, I know, but the biggest disappointment about that is I know that we're almost done, but so what, right?
Well, we don't have to watch it anymore.
Yeah, I know, but you're not wrong, but you know what I mean by so what? Like, we're almost done, but ultimately, to what cost?
I think we're going to feel that way a lot about shows like this because they only lasted one season. Yeah, and I think that's
Kitchen Confidential wasn't even this bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd still rather watch more episodes of Prisoner.
Then Kitchen Confidential is half the length of any episode of this show?
Probably, just because this show I would not mind having on in background is just something that I can tune in and out of, and I don't feel so much that way about Kitchen Confidential. But I think again this comes down to our varying tastes, and what I'm more willing to put up with is different from what you're more willing to put up with, if it falls into something that you would otherwise be interested in. And I think that as an sort of art piece, I find this show interesting. As a concept, I find this show interesting. As a failure, I find this show interesting because I do find myself, I still am thinking about it when we're not watching it, and I still am wanting to know more about it because it is such an anomaly.
Well, it's definitely an anomaly. I mean, look, this feels like a failure, but like a failure upwards for the most part.
Yeah, and that's, again, this is sort of a prototype show. That's what we can look at it as, is it's a prototype. It was a high concept television show at a time where high concept TV did not exist, really, outside of Doctor Who. It did in British television. That's fine. There were Doctor Who and everything was there. But, into American audiences, high concept television, not so much. Maybe things like Twilight Zone. But that was, and I guess it's still sci-fi. And this show paved the way for a lot of things, as we've talked about before. It's super influential. So, yeah, as a prototype, it has a lot of bugs and it has a lot of failures and it doesn't really work. But it did open a lot of doors, I think.
No, I completely agree. I mean, that is the success of the show.
Yes, is that through its failure, of which, as a storytelling, it is a huge failure. It did open up a new realm, though, for story and television that I think, we are much better served for having. Thank God we're still watching 28 episodes of shit like Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, but Gilligan's Island is endearing. I'm not sure that the show is endearing.
Well, no, but this show's not trying to be endearing. This show wants to, it has theme, conspiracy, and paranoia, and, government, and there's a lot of more, intellectual and, layered, depthy issues peppered throughout this, where shows like Gilligan's Island were what they were supposed to be. 25 minutes of endearing charm and until you go to bed.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. I just feel like sitting here watching this episode specifically. This episode just is.
This episode sucks.
Yeah, this episode, this is the worst offense the show has ever put in front of us, bar none.
Yeah. And I guess it's better that it's later on because it doesn't, I feel like this would have really soured things much sooner if this had been higher up and if we had watched this closer to the beginning. But I don't know. It's not good. It's not a good episode at all. These episodes weren't good. The last couple of episodes weren't good. It's unfortunate that we're stuck in just the swamps of filler episodes at the moment, because I do really want to know how this ends, and I am, looking forward to finishing it and kind of discussing, overall the show. But once we have that ending cap on it. But right now it just feels like it's a balloon just losing air forever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Rubber got popped a long time ago.
Yeah. The reality of this show is that it is a race to the bottom, and we are still on the decline, and I don't think that we might get an uptick in the second to last episode Once Upon a Time, but if everything is to be believed that we've heard about Fallout, it is going to be nuclear failure.
Right.
Because let's not kid ourselves, Fallout probably has to do with a nuclear weapon of some form or fashion.
I would assume so, yes.
But this is... It is unconscionable that they put this episode together and tried to pass it off as something worth watching. It really is.
Yeah.
There's nothing positive to say about the episode. This is one of the few times doing a podcast where I don't want you to watch this because I have seen it. And
yeah,
it serves no purpose, and it gave me no satisfaction to watch it. And if you watch it knowing that Jess and I have said, this is bad, really don't watch this, and you watch it and come away saying it is bad, you're watching it at your own peril. Yeah,
I would say, and we'll talk about this, when we wrap up the shows, when we get to our order, and probably throw in episodes that we would eliminate. This is definitely one of them. If you're watching this show, you can totally skip it. It does not matter. Just don't. Because, spoiler alert, it was all a dream, / it was all a story, / it never happened, /
/ who cares?
Right.
Because apparently the people who made the show didn't care, so why should we care?
Nobody but Patrick McGoohan.
Well, nobody who made this show cared, except for Patrick, but whatever. It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do, Patrick McGoohan? Because we can't do anything. We can't help you because,
nope.
Apparently everybody else didn't care enough about your show to give it a fair shake anyways. So, that's the truth. They wanted more episodes, and this is what happens. They diluted an idea down into something that is barely an idea worth talking about.
Yeah. They wanted more episodes so they could sell it to American markets to make more money. And they, in turn, killed a show that would never see the light of day again, with any more seasons, because they, again, just squeezed every ounce of anything that it was out of it.
Which really begs the question what this show would have been like if it had only been 7 episodes. If this show had been 7 episodes only, would this be widely considered to be one of the greatest shows of all time? As opposed
that's
to
what I wonder.
classic, right?
Yeah. That's what I wonder. That's why I want to, I want to know which 7 episodes are those episodes, and then kind of like take those out and examine them just as a group together. Because, yeah, I think the show, with all the potential that it had, could have been one of, best TV shows of all time. But unfortunately, it's definitely one of probably the most, intriguing shows of all time, I guess, initially on paper. But yeah, it feels like every episode is the same.
Werewolf. Yeah, this is feeling more and more like Werewolf, because Werewolf at its core was also a very interesting show, and it had the potential to really be something special. And then 2 years later, or not 2 years, but several years later, a show came out that really turned the industry on its head, which was the X-Files, and Werewolf could have been that show. And this show came out when Star Trek was out, and Star Trek turned the TV industry on its head, and this show could have done the same thing, and to some extent it did, but it doesn't have the staying power.
Right.
Because look, even episodes of Star Trek aren't very good, but I'll tell you what.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you what, even the worst episode of Star Trek is better than the best episode of this show, without a doubt. Unless the last 2 episodes are going to be some grand experiment in storytelling, I would take the worst episode of Star Trek, the original series, a show that came out around the same time as this show, than any of the episodes of this show, period. Mm-hmm. I'll go and just put TOS on in the background on shuffle on Netflix or on my Plex server, but I would not put this on shuffle on my Plex server. I just wouldn't, because I run the risk of getting one of these episodes, like Living in Harmony or The Girl Who Was Death. And
I find something very comforting about the sounds of television shows from the 60s. Like the sound effects, the music, like the transitional music and stuff like that. I don't know. There's something about it that I like the atmosphere that it creates. So having something like this on in the background would be fine for me, because I'm not paying attention to it, and I just like that I like the sonic sounds of it.
No, I completely get it. If I'm going to put something on from the 60s, it's not going to be this. I would
rather watch The Twilight Zone.
That too. You've got all these choices of shows that do so much more. Again, not kidding ourselves that there are not good episodes of The Twilight Zone. Or there are bad ones. There's probably more middle-of-the-road episodes of The Twilight Zone than good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so many episodes of that show, but at the same time, the episodes that are good of The Twilight Zone are transcendently good. People are still talking about them 50, 60, 70, 80, God knows how much longer, in perpetuity. Mm-hmm. This show is a missed opportunity in the biggest and most egregious way.
Would you rather watch this show or the new Twilight Zone? The 2019.
I'd rather put a blindfold on.
I'd rather watch this show.
I'd rather put a blindfold on and go walk.
Take a short walk off a long bridge, or take a long walk off a short bridge.
No, I'd rather put a blindfold on and go walk into traffic out behind my house and see what happens. I'll put my hands in something something greater than myself and see if I can make it to the other side of the street without getting hit by a car. Because the Twilight Zone 2019 is just trash. It is the definition of race-baiting, clickbaity garbage television that serves no purpose in 2019 other than to rile up people for no reason. And at least this show doesn't have any of those problems. It has its own problems, but it's not trying to essentially pigeonhole itself as a show that could only exist in 2019 and no time else.
Right.
That's the thing about the Twilight Zone from the 60s that made it so great, is the stories and the allegories are timeless. And to some extent, The Prisoner is a timeless show with with what it's talking about. But yeah, Twilight Zone 2019, it is so pigeonholed itself into a show that can only exist in the 21st century, in the woke culture of the 21st century.
In the 1 year of 21st century.
Yeah. Oh, it's the Trump Twilight Zone is pretty much what it bills itself as. Right? Do what?
Because that's what we want, right?
Yeah, a show that when you watch it, if you watch it 10 years from now, people will go, okay, like.
Well, yeah, I do remember when when our president was a child. I do remember that.
Oh, boy,
and next.
Heavy-handed. Hit me over the head with that giant sledgehammer. So, we're ragged on this show, but, we wouldn't be watching the show if we didn't think it had something to add. But this episode really just, when I was done watching it, I just was frustrated, to say the least.
Yeah, I was gonna text you and be like, you're gonna hate this episode.
Well, I hated it from like 5 minutes in when I realized that it's clearly a dream or something.
It could only be one thing.
Yeah, it has to be a dream or some variation on a this doesn't actually exist, is not existing in a way that's reality. So, yeah. So what are we talking about on the next and final episode? Or I guess second to last episode of this season of the One Season Show.
Yes, we are wrapping up the series Prisoner with the final 2 episodes, which are Once Upon a Time and Fallout.
So until then, Jess, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard, and you can find me twice a month on your show, Chris, The Culture Cast, where we're talking movies. Every month's a different theme. And you can find both of us over on our other podcast, Scary Stories We Tell, where we chat true crime, paranormal, horror culture, all that good spooky, kooky stuff. So if you like that, head on over and check it out. What about you, Chris?
You can find me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. I talk about all the projects that I'm on there. Jess already mentioned most of them, so there's no point in plugging all of them. At One Season Show on Twitter is where you can find us, and oneseasonshow.com is where you can find the other 2 seasons of this show. Big thanks, as always, to Mustaches and Martinis. That is the music for this season of the One Season Show, and we'll catch you on the next episode.